Good afternoon. I'm Adele Gordon, Head of Product and Marketing at James Hardie, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the James Hardie Modern Homes Forecast 2025. We are incredibly proud to see the tangible impact last year's forecast has had and is having in inspiring and shaping modern home design across Australia and New Zealand. At James Hardie, we remain committed to investing in research and product development to ensure we understand our market and can continue to positively influence the residential construction landscape. This year, our 2025 research report zones in on 4 key lifestyle themes influencing how we want to live, and 8 modern home styles that are evolving to suit our changing needs. The report highlights well-being as a top priority. With loneliness now a global concern, homes are being designed to foster both social connection and mental well-being. Biophilic elements, light-filled spaces, and saunas and ice baths are becoming key to creating restorative environments. We see adaptability as more important than ever. With 1 in 5 Australians living in multi-generational households, demand for flexible spaces is growing. Smart layouts and rooms that can transform are helping homes evolve to meet varying and diverse needs. We are acutely aware of the increasing climate risks, and the report shows focus on resilience is rising. Durable materials play an important role in helping protect homes from fire, moisture, and termites. Energy-efficient designs and climate-responsive features are also helping future-proof our homes. And finally, we see how innovation is reshaping construction. Rising costs are driving interest in prefab and modular solutions. These can deliver efficiency and sustainability without compromising quality. I am thrilled we have design expert Neale Whitaker with us to facilitate today's discussion with our panel of experts. On behalf of James Hardie, I'd like to thank them for being here today to share their unique perspectives on the future of home design. I will now hand over to Neale. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele, and good afternoon again, everyone. It is fantastic to be here for the second year running, hosting the James Hardie Modern Homes Forecast. Now, as someone who has been immersed in the world of design in various ways for many years, I find this research fascinating because it goes well beyond aesthetics. It's about how we're living today and how our homes are evolving to support that. And today we have an incredible panel of experts who bring unique insights into these shifts. Before we begin, though, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the talented designers and collaborators who've played a crucial role in bringing those 8 modern looks to life. That is Folar Architecture for modern coastal, Three Birds Renovations for modern farmhouse, Build Her Collective for the box modern, Julian Brenchley for the barn, Dean Dyson Architects for modern heritage, Stefan Gian for Japandi, Mira Residential for mid-century modern, and Orton House for modern classical. Their expertise, their creativity, and their vision have been instrumental in shaping these inspiring home styles, each reflecting the evolving way that Australians are designing and living in their homes today. So, let's get into it. I think we have a video. Hello, I'm Neale Whitaker. I've dedicated my career as an editor, design expert, and TV host to the design and building industries. And I'm thrilled to present the James Hardie Modern Homes Forecast 2025, leading the charge in rethinking the Australian home design landscape. Informed by advanced AI-driven analytics, comprehensive desktop research, and expert insights from architects and designers, the forecast is crafted to inspire homeowners to bring their vision to life and empower trade professionals to build modern dream homes with confidence. This year, the forecast uncovered 4 influential lifestyle themes, shaping the way we design and build our homes today and into the future. James Hardie's research has identified 8 home styles designed to suit our modern lives. Box modern, modern farmhouse, modern heritage, barn, Japandi, modern coastal, mid-century modern, and a new style, the elegant, whimsical and warm modern classical. Read the forecast and build your modern life. It's possible with James Hardie. So I would now like to introduce this afternoon's incredible panel. I'm going to move over here because I think this is my spot. So I'll introduce them in the order I think they're going to be sitting next to me. Builder and founder of Futureflip, Neale Hipwell. The founding director and CEO of PreFabAustralia, Damien Crough. The head of Green Star Strategic Delivery for the Green Building Council of Australia, Elham Monavari. Interior designer, Kate Lawrence. And Chief Economist for the Housing Industry Association, Tim Reardon. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to, yes, can I pinch a bit of your table to put my water on? Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to get right into it, which means I need to find another piece of paper. We'll be running for around about 45 minutes. Okay, we may go a little bit over that, but probably around about 45 minutes. So I'm going to jump straight in to this. And the first section, the first questions really are about shaping the future of homes. And I'm going to ask the question to each of you. How are the key themes of well-being, flexibility, resilience, and efficiency influencing your projects? And what major shifts do you anticipate in the near future? Neale, let's go to you first.
Okay, so I think the main thing is the cost of building is too high. People can't afford to build what they want to build. So efficiency is the key for us. We are focusing mainly on that, and also having that wellness aspect, creating a space that is comfortable and tranquil and nice to live in. So I think they're the 2 key focuses for us.
Damien.
Hi, everybody. Well, I think, I represent PreFabAustralia with the Peak Industry Association for off-site construction, and what we're seeing is obviously a big push for more prefabricated solutions. And with that, the manufacturing, factory-built quality and affordability starts to come into it. So, and flexibility, agility is a really important aspect to what we need in the industry. And also what we're seeing is a much better educated consumer demanding energy-efficient homes. And I think that's the big thing, is that's a real consumer drive. And so therefore the challenge is to meet the needs of the consumer. And I think the industry is doing a really good job with that.
Just before we move on to you, Ellen, can everyone hear okay? Just want to make sure that. And one thing I did forget to do is to welcome all the people that I know are watching this online. Sorry, everyone online. It's wonderful. I know there's an awful lot of you joining us online, so welcome to Sydney. Sorry, I interrupted. Ellen, the same question to you.
I would say it's very much all of the above. Working for the Green Building Council of Australia means that I get to dabble and play in effectively all of the themes that we've talked about. I've been working on the Green Star Homes program and the residential program for the GBCA for the last 5 years or so. So the ethos of health and well-being is really core and fundamental, energy efficiency, of course, but also increasingly around the products and the materials, and how those products and materials can also have a positive impact as well. I've been really excited, firstly, to be here within this beautiful space and really talk about, nature and biophilic design, because a big piece of work that I'm currently leading is the nature roadmap for the built environment, and it's all around bringing nature back into cities and within the built environment. So I think for the GBCA, we see all of this as being really critical and fundamental. We definitely also see the the consumer driver, as has been noted, but also being really cognizant of some of those upfront costs. And I'm sure we'll get into that as the panel progresses. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
I think from an interior designer's perspective, I'm seeing an increase in the need for flexibility and also just wellness. That they're kind of key things that I'm seeing today as when clients are coming to me, this is something that they're really driving. And I don't feel like that was as important before, but now it definitely is something that is having to be factored into every single design.
Mm-hmm. Tim?
Yes, so the comment there about cost of building, that's a very central issue to all of what's happening at the moment. And whenever you pay that price for building work, that new home build, knowing that half of it is government costs and only half of it is actually the product is really important. And if we can lower that, then the quality, the amenity, all of those aspects can be improved. But where we sit at the moment, the pandemic saw an enormous shift as people spent more time at home and they invested in their home. The utility that they required out of their home increased significantly. Now, as we see constraints on the number of homes, people increasing the density, more people per home, we're seeing that knockdown rebuild market is exceptionally strong. The home renovation market is exceptionally strong. And I suspect that plays into what you're talking about here with flexibility, which is the need for what they require from their home is so much greater now than what it was pre-pandemic.
Let's turn to building efficiencies and affordability. And I apologise to this side of the room if my back is turned to you a lot of the time. I will try not to do that as much as possible. There is a perception that energy efficient homes are costly. So I'm asking you guys, can you share examples where smart design or materials have improved efficiency while reducing long-term costs? Let's go to you, Elham.
Thank you for that. So I started off, and you could tell from my job title that I work for the Green Building Council of Australia, and there's a standard, as we call it, called Green Star that we've used to try and define what a good home looks like. So in developing that standard, I knew that it was really critical to focus on the three key things that are important for consumers and people that are living in homes. So their health and well-being, having a home that's efficient and cheaper to run, and then thirdly, making sure that it's also able to withstand the impacts of climate change so that it's resilient. So they're the three core aspects that I focused on. And I think when we're thinking about design, they're the three things that you should really keep front of mind when you're designing a home. It's often the different features within the home that you don't see, and they're the ones that you really should focus in on because they become the really expensive things to retrofit later on. So things like having better insulation, having better windows, and also air tightness is probably one that people may forget, and it has a really huge impact from an efficiency point of view. Now, with more insulation and better windows, yes, there's an extra cost associated, but with air tightness, it really comes down to the build quality. And so when developing the Green Star Home Standard, we focused in on those, but we also wanted to make sure that every decision that we made was keeping the cost to the consumer front of mind as well, which is why we commissioned an independent study by KPMG to look at a home that's built to code and one that's built to the Green Star Home Standards, and then give us the cost differential. So the great news is that we found that through that study, there was not such a huge cost impost. When you looked at that initial upfront cost, the savings definitely far outweighed it and was pretty quick to get to that saving point as well. So the extra cost really on average was like $40 to $80 extra per month, but the cost savings in your energy bills was $90 to $140 a month. We also found that if you were able to use that money to try and put it onto your loan, that you would save $85,000 to $115,000 in interest. And it effectively made you help you to pay off your mortgage much faster. So they're the cost savings from some of these key decisions, but there's also all of the benefits that one feels when they're in a home that is more healthy, that has better air quality, has great access to daylight. And it's often those costs, those attributes that are hard to cost, but are also the emotive elements that a lot of home builders or home owners respond very positively to.
Tim, I'm going to ask you a question which sounds deceptively simple, but I think it's probably a very big question. What is the economic forecast for housing in 2025, and how are builders and homeowners adapting to that?
Look, we're past the bottom of the cycle. We saw the bottom of the cycle everywhere around the country somewhere before the middle of last year, except for here in Sydney. There's a different problem here in Sydney, but it's a very simple story when you look at it from big picture perspective. Interest rates go up, home building slows down. Right at the moment, we've seen one cut to the cash rate. We've got one, maybe three to come this year. Home building activity is going to pick up. Sydney is a different problem. Sydney is reasonably structurally broken from a land supply perspective, from a planning perspective. We've got half the number of homes commencing construction in Sydney as what's commencing in Melbourne. In fact, fewer homes in Sydney than what's starting in Perth. That little bit aside, we're through that down cycle. From the parts of the market that are really strong, knockdown rebuild, particularly here in Sydney, anybody that owned a block of land prior to 2019 is reasonably well cashed up and solvent to renovate and undertake high-end work. High-end renovation activity is very strong. It is those market-sensitive customers that are particularly challenged. I think the other side of the market that we're going to see here in Sydney, that there is ongoing price growth. 22,000 homes per year, and for Australia, 500,000 increase in population. Those numbers don't add up. So Sydney is still losing around about 1,000 people a month moving elsewhere simply due to the cost of living. But from a home perspective, the amenity has changed. The apartment builders will report that people want more work from home space. That work from home nook can't face back onto the kitchen anymore. It needs to be a dedicated space. And that change in density that we're going to see over the course of the next couple of years is going to see some further flexibility and amenity changes to that design as well.
Neale, if I can ask you, can you share an example of a project where you've maintained craftsmanship while still unlocking efficiencies? What techniques or technologies have you used to help achieve this?
So I wouldn't say a particular project, but pretty much all of our projects, we focus on simplicity and exposing the raw structure of the building that has to be there. Things like off-form concrete, exposing steel beams, exposing the rafters in the building, basically trying to eliminate adding materials that are not needed. So gyprock, paint, you can just leave the slab, expose it, polish it, whatever you need to do with that. That in itself is a big saving because you're not waiting on gyprockers that are really hard to find at the moment. You're not waiting on trades. And at the moment, the biggest problem in the industry is we can't get trades. So if you can get rid of some of those trades, you actually speed the build up, you save money. If the build's faster, it's obviously more cost effective. The other major cost is kind of obviously in the labour, but you also need to look at the external claddings of a building.
Yeah.
The main thing is for us, instead of doing double brick and concrete and rendering that building and waiting on the trade and waiting on the weather's a big one because renderers won't render a wall in the rain. So if you can get rid of the renderer and just do timber frame clad and do something that's pre-primed, ready to paint, like an Axon or something externally, get it on really quickly, you're minimising the risk in the job and you're getting the scaffold down quicker, you're closing the job out quicker. And every day a construction site's open, there's thousands of dollars there. So that's what we implement when we are doing, our own developments.
Yeah. Damien, coming to you, prefab is often debated or talked about as a solution to affordability. What are your perspectives on the role of prefab in the future of housing?
Well, I think it's going to play a really big role in the future. And, if you look at some of the things that have been happening in the last few months alone, Commonwealth Bank have come on board with PreFabAus to develop a contract specific for purchasing Class 1 buildings. So in the past, the manufacturer may receive 5 or 10% of the value of the contract while the home is in a factory. The policy change, which is happening, means that manufacturer will secure 60% of the value of the contract before anything leaves the factory. So that's a huge boost to manufacturers. It's going to drive a lot of growth in the sector. The other thing that's happening is we're writing the contract. So purchasers will be able to have a specific contract that then recognises those payment structures and be able to go to their local supplier, wherever they are around Australia, and purchase a home. So, that in itself will drive a huge amount of change. The affordability one is an interesting one because, if you're building a one-off architecturally designed home, it's always going to be expensive. So the same thing goes for prefab. That doesn't change. what happens is when you have, like the volume builders do, and some of those in the room today, where you have a range of products and you have a range of standardised products, that's where you start to get the efficiencies of factory componentry. So I think what we really need to see is the volume builders starting to get involved in using more prefab systems, and that doesn't need to be fully finished homes. That can be components and parts, and there's lots of different methods, and we can talk about that later on. But this is going to play a big role. Really, I mean, if you look at what's happened across all other industries around the world, automotive industry, aerospace industry, everybody has gone to digitisation, to what we call Industry 4.0. Right? And that's where you take manufacturing and digitisation. The construction industry is still an Industry 2.0. So we still have a bit to go to get there. But as you can see with other industries, the car industry, productivity goes up every year and costs either stay the same or come down a little bit. And that's the benefit of industrialisation and manufacturing. So I think we're going to see a big change very soon. There's a lot of factories coming online in Australia, all around the country, in every state, that are producing factory manufactured components and parts for buildings. So there will be a lot of very good competitive solutions available soon that everybody can leverage.
Now, I guess I will come to the rest of you in a moment, but I guess while this particular question is focusing very much on building efficiency, so I'm sort of focusing on you guys at the moment. Neale, what's your take on prefab? Asking you the same question that I just asked Damien.
I agree with Damien in a lot of ways. However, I don't think we're quite there yet. There's definitely a place for prefab, but a lot of the, high-end market, a lot of the buildings that we build have spans and floor-to-ceiling glass, and a lot of the time when we look into the prefab options, it's just not there for what we're building, and trying to maximise space on a regular block, things like eastern suburbs, or if you're looking at a beautiful view or something, the prefab options just aren't always there.
Yeah.
However, in saying that, there has been projects in Bondi and things like that where we can't get access, and we'll be paying $50,000 to $100,000 for council work zones so that we can have a little sign out the front of the job so we can park our workers' car there, which normally someone else parks there anyway, and we don't get to use it. But that's sort of the things that you face trying to build in tight access places. So building off-site in a factory environment, I do agree that the quality can be better.
Yeah.
There's no rain, there's no weather hitting the materials. So you can create a better product, you can do a road closure for the day and build majority of the house in one day. So I agree that it is better in some ways, but I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of having the factories, because they're not there yet. The distance of travel is what gets you. The travelling, the modular homes and the prefab is where you pay your money. Yeah.
Okay. And Damien, just very quickly before we move on to our next topic, what from your perspective are the key considerations when integrating prefab into existing homes to ensure a seamless result?
Well, exactly what was just touched on. I mean, fundamentally, you've got to look at the logistics. Where is it? What are the site conditions? What can you actually get there? So in some instances, you cannot get a fully finished modular component to site. And that's, ideally, that's what you could do. Everything comes, you put the family dog in there and off you go, it's finished. And it's easy and it's beautiful. But that's not always the case. Steep sloping sites where you're at the back, you've got all of these different site constraints and challenges. So you really have to understand what is available. And there's a lot of what we call panelised systems, kit parts, and these are larger elements, wall elements that may have the external cladding installed, the windows, the internal lighting, the electrical, and the whole wall panel comes in and can be lifted in easily in pieces. So you've just got to understand what are the site constraints, what can I do, and also understanding the supply chain, because if you don't know what systems are out there and what are available, then you won't use them. So design and planning is the very first stage of any project, and it's really important that you engage with the supply chain to understand what's there. And so we've undertaken some research last year and mapped across the country 1,190 companies that participate in the prefab supply chain in Australia. We've got data for 680 of those in the first two categories, which is the volumetric and the panelised construction. And we know that that's 8% of the current construction sector right now. So it's gone from 3% to 8% in about the last 10 years. So there's been significant growth, and we expect that to grow up to 15% by the end of this decade.
Right. Let's move on now to talk about flexible and resilient homes. And Kate, I'm going to come to you. How are you addressing the demand for versatile spaces? Can you share an example where flexible design has made a real difference?
I think one thing that became clear to all designers after COVID was just the change was what people are needing from their homes, and we need so much more from our homes now. So previously it would be I need 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Nowadays I need still 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but I also need a home office and I need a study nook for my children and I need a home gym. So we expect a lot more from these homes. And as a designer, it's about asking those questions to the client so you can ultimately achieve this. I find that best way to achieve this is often through smart joinery design. So I'll give you an example of a project that I'm working on at the moment, which is in Balmain. So it's a very, very small block, but the client still wants all of these things. So although it's super tiny, they still want the 3 bedrooms and they still want the home office. So it's my job as a designer to figure out, okay, well, where can we actually fit this? And that's where I've had to turn one of the rooms into a multi-purpose space. So it's got the Murphy bed, which folds back into the wall. It looks like a beautiful bank of joinery, but then my client can have their desk in front of it. So when they're on these Zoom calls, it's reflecting a beautiful bank of joinery. Little do you know that there's a bed inside that. So it's about thinking about how you can creatively come up with different ways to encompass what the client is needing in the home.
Okay. Elham, can I come to you? With increasing climate risks, I'll start that question again. With increasing climate risks, how do sustainability certifications indicate, this is my worst nightmare. With increasing climate risks, Elham, how do sustainability certifications like Green Star Guide, I think it's because the question is missing a few words here. Basically, the Green Star Guide, how does it indicate resilient home design? I think that's what the question's supposed to say. Thank you so much. I did get there in the end. This doesn't happen on TV.
Of course. Thank you very much for the question.
Did you understand what I said?
I think I got the
Because I would
gist.
forgive you if you didn't.
No, I got the vibe. So yes, I think like resilience and seeing it reflected in the forecast is really great. Well, I mean, it's not great to see because it indicates that there's an issue and there's a problem. And I think the fact that right now we're seeing, cyclones about to hit Queensland. We saw like about a month ago, fires in Los Angeles. 5 years ago, there was the big bushfires in New South Wales. Then we had the flooding as well. It effectively means that a lot of homes aren't built to be able to really withstand a lot of these impacts. Now, where Green Star comes into it is because we knew up front that we wanted to make sure that the homes were going to be climate change ready and resilient. And so it is one of the 3 pillars of the Green Star Home Standard. The importance of a rating tool like Green Star is that it helps to take a lot of the guesswork out for people, because I think often if you're trying to build a home, it can be quite overwhelming. You're overwhelmed with a lot of decisions. There's a lot of technical aspects that you need to consider, and there's just so much that you need to learn and understand. I mean, it's good to see that, yes, there is consumer awareness increasing, but I think when it comes to try and make the day-to-day decisions as to what is and isn't not resilient is sometimes where some people can get unstuck. And so Green Star Homes is essentially a standard, as we call it, and it looks at the 3 elements that I outlined around health and well-being, energy efficiency and resilience. And once you see that stamp, you will know that all of those things have been considered. So it does definitely help, and I think that's the part that a new owner can really be assured and reassured that thinking has been done. Our standard is, we have a very robust process in place for certifying projects. It's done independently. We've got, in accordance with the ACCC trademark rules, and we also have an assessment process that's quality management system certified. So we make sure that we're holding ourselves to account to provide that assurance and that sense of trust when people see our brand and logo, that is something definitely that sits strongly behind that as well. So I think that's where Green Star can really help.
Yeah.
We have one now for apartments as well. So we've got one for single family dwellings, but we've got one for apartments. And resilience is a common thread, because one of the things that I forgot to mention in the first answer was that you do find a lot of banks. So you talked about Commonwealth Bank. Like Commonwealth Bank is one of the banks that recognises Green Star Homes through a reduction in its mortgage rates. So we know that for a lot of lenders, this is a really important aspect as well. And when we were talking to the banks, resilience was one of the key elements that they really wanted to see.
Thank you. And thank you for answering so eloquently a question that I really screwed up. I thought Uncle Michael's job descriptions were the hardest thing that I was going to have to navigate today, but I was wrong. Damien, coming to you. With multi-generational living on the rise, how can prefab and modular solutions adapt? Sorry, and I'm now looking at Tim and asking a question to Damien. With multi-generational living on the rise, how can prefab and modular solutions offer adaptable designs for evolving family needs?
Well, yeah, and it comes down to the design and planning at the beginning, and I think that's a really important thing to do. So we have a terminology that we use in the industry, which is starting to sort of make its way right through the industry, which is called DFMA, Design for Manufacture and Assembly, and there's another D on that, which is disassembly. So when we talk about design, we should be thinking about the circular economy, getting to net zero. And the best way that we can do that is designing and planning it that way from day one. That also gives us flexibility and agility in multi-generational aspects. So what we're seeing is now in university courses around the country, they're starting to embed into that this DFMA process. We run a university competition every year called the Challenge Cup, and that's a multidisciplinary team where architects, engineers and construction managers have to form a team and work together to solve a problem, which is really different to what it's like in industry, right? So it's quite interesting. And the outcome of that is phenomenal, and some of the designs are amazing, and what they're showing is the ability to grow and subtract from buildings based on the requirements of the occupants at that time, at what point in time they are there in their life. So whether it's a young family, whether you're about to have children, whether you're ageing in place, you know, the opportunity for passive income by converting some of your home into another residence for, you know, passive income when you're retiring. So all of these things are starting to be considered. And with prefabrication and off-site construction, it makes it easier to do that, because you design it to be disassembled or reconfigured or added to or subtracted from. So it's early days in that place, but I think we're going to get there, and I think there's a real move towards the DFMA because multi-generational living is growing rapidly, and it really is an issue, and it's actually a really good solution too. You know, so we think it's going to be, you know, we're going to see a lot more of it very soon.
Tim, coming to you, what economic factors are driving or hindering the adoption of resilient materials? Are there financial incentives for homeowners or builders?
Of course, like every decision we make in life, you can choose between quality or quantity, and the same is true in this space. And I think we're probably better defining it out between cost and value for money. But from a prefab resilient design perspective, it was mentioned before that one of the major constraints for builders is that acute shortage of labour, and that's a very consistent theme. And I hate to tell you this, but the shortage of labour at the moment, this is as good as it gets. It only gets worse from here on in as we build more homes. That shortage of labour is going to become more acute. But I think we need to also know that prefabrication story, resilient design, we haven't just started that. We're a long way into this. It really queued up post GFC 2007 timeframe. We've seen very large investment from overseas companies into the Australian building industry. We've seen a lot more prefabrication. They're now the big end of town are highly vertically integrated. They grow their own trees, they mill their own lumber, they create their own frames, they take them to their own building sites and tilt them up with their own labour to reduce that labour cost. What we're going to see now is the next phase of that. So that happens every exogenous shock. GFC, COVID was the next. So coming out of this cycle, we're going to see that next element of it, and you've gone into and explained it very well there. I think that the bit that we miss, though, is that prefabrication we divided up between 2D, which is what we've done to date, and 3D is the bit we can't do in Australia, and we can't do it because we have local councils. There was a very large investment from a global bank in prefabricated detached homes that closed in 2019. And when they go through all the list of reasons why it closed, they could build a completed 4-bedroom home in 16 weeks and deliver it anywhere in the country. But if they happened to sell it into Victoria, they had to take it off one truck and put it onto a different truck because the trucking regulations were different in Victoria to South Australia. So until we can solve our planning regimes, our building code consistency, all of those prefabrication is challenging because of government.
Okay, thank you. Moving now on to the point at which innovation and affordability meet. Neale, how do builders balance cost with high quality innovative design? And what efficiencies help keep costs down without sacrificing quality?
So all of the cost savers I see is in the design room. That's where the focus needs to go, and builders need to get in there with architects and work together to create something that is affordable to build and something that is simple. Architecture doesn't need to be difficult. If you can load your building on top of load points and not load things on top of windows and garage door openings and just keep it quite simple, you'll obviously save a lot of money and still have the same size house. You don't have to reduce the size of the house if you want a big house and you want the gyms and all the other things. Another thing now that we heavily look at is we have to conform to a 7-star rating. So energy efficiency is forced on us to make sure we come up with the best solution. So if you're designing a house and you have massive glazing that's not shaded and it's facing west or whatever, you're not going to get it to comply. And the only way to get it to comply is going to be spending huge money on triple glazing, low air glass. It's thermally broken, and you're going to spend more money on the glass than the entire house. So orientation and analysing the best place to put the house that's not going to heat it up and use the right insulation and things like that. That is the key factor, simplicity. And then obviously bathrooms loading on top of bathrooms, not having the bathroom at the other end of the house where your plumber's got to go run pipes all the way down there. Just keep it simple. It's actually quite basic to get a house to be efficient to build. And then things like cladding, just your neighbours, who cares what your neighbours see? Just do something nice and cheap for the neighbours' side, and then save your money for things like kitchens, bathrooms, and the things that matter, the things that sell houses, I think.
Damien, the same question to you, really. How do prefab and modular designs balance affordability with sustainability and style?
Well, I think, as I've touched on before, design and planning is the most important part of it, and engaging with the supply chain at that point. And I think that's a really important factor, because there's so much knowledge and expertise in the supply chain that can be embedded into the design to provide efficiencies for that project. But for some reason, we don't really link the design and planning stage through to the procurement and manufacturing stage early enough, in my opinion. So I think that's a really good way forward. But fundamentally, when you're building something in a factory, like, Toyota build 1 million Corollas a year, you buy one because you're going to turn the key every day and it goes and it starts and it runs perfectly because it's built on a production line with a QA process. It comes with a warranty. So when something's built in a factory, the opportunity to have tighter tolerances and for things to be assembled in a much better and quality way, you have a greater opportunity for that. So what we're seeing is the buildings coming out of factories, our prefabricated, whether they're fully volumetric homes or parts of buildings, whether they're panelised, we're seeing really high-performing products coming out of factories at affordable prices because it's done on a production line and it's done, to a really specific procedure. And that's what we need to see more of. So that volume and that scale starts to bring affordability into it, but also provides the opportunity for better performing buildings. As was touched on before, I mean, the other thing is the CapEx is 20% of the cost of the life cycle of a building or a home. So be smart and spend a little bit of the money on the things up front which are going to give you significant benefits and savings across the life cycle of that building. I think that's a really important message as well.
Thank you. Let's move on now to homes that enhance well-being. And Kate, I'm coming to you with the first question. How are well-being features like biophilic design and natural materials shaping your projects?
I think biophilical design is probably one of the most important things in interior design. And it's not necessarily that clients are coming to me saying, I need a biophysical, I need those elements incorporated into my home, because they might not even know necessarily what that means. But if I said to them, how do you want your house to feel and how do you want to live in it? They would say, I want beautiful light. I want a connection to the indoors and the outdoors. I would like open plan living. So it's my job to then try and incorporate those features in a way. And that's looking at the floor plan and saying, is that the best way that the house can operate? Am I connecting the indoors to the outdoors? Am I providing enough sources of natural light? And it makes such a massive difference. And they probably don't even know why they love being in their home, but it's those very reasons why they do. And then in terms of the use of natural materials, I think this is something that I have always done in my designs. And maybe that's because I feel like it gives me a sense of calm, and I feel like it gives my clients a sense of calm within their home. And we live in such a fast-paced environment now that your house should be a place that you retreat to. So using things like timbers and natural stone without even knowing, again, in that house, they feel very calm. And, when they're working from home in these spaces, there's a higher level of productivity. So I feel like, again, without the client knowing how important it is the most important thing in interior design.
Yeah. And Neale, can I ask you, how do materials and construction techniques contribute to mental and physical well-being?
So materials are very important, and I think the best way to answer that question would be to give you an example. So if you're constructing a house on a main road, a highway, and you build the structure out of like a colorbond steel clad product, inside that house is going to be extremely noisy. If your glass is just 4mm float glass, you're going to be like the stress of the road. You're just hearing that. I couldn't think of anything worse. But if you use products like the Stria and Oblique that have a 14mm thick, dense fibre cement, you've got a good acoustic rating. If you use Hushlam glass, like 1038 Hushlam glass on all your glazing, you're not going to hear the highway. So you directly changing the way you feel in the house. And that goes the same with thermal quality. So imagine a colorbond clad black house just getting belted by west sun. In that house, you would have to just be full crank on the aircon all the time. You wouldn't be able to open the doors because you're relying on a silly way to get the house to a right climate. And then the same goes with glazing, and Katie touched on before, having the glazing bringing the natural elements in. So if you're looking at water, a pond, a river, an ocean, any kind of nature, greenery, bringing that inside the house makes you feel something. It makes you feel better than having no windows and in a little box like a jail. So if you kind of consider all of the things that create that space, materials are everything. You need to be so critical on the insulation you use, the products you use, so that inside that house is a good climate.
I've got one eye on the time, and I know we're almost at time, but let's bring everything back now to the 2025 Modern Homes forecast. And I want to ask each of you which of the 8 modern homes have evolved the most, in your opinion. Let's start with you, Tim.
Oh, that one has to be the furthest away from when I can answer. The impact of Japandi on the house values is beyond me. I'm so sorry for that.
So you're passing on that one?
I have to. I have no data on that one. I have to go to a data point or a graph.
Okay, well, moving on. Kate.
Do you know what? I'm going to do something cheeky. And we were speaking earlier, Neale and I, and I'm going to steal this. So, because I agree with you, we're talking about coastal homes and how much they've evolved, because, traditionally they were and you can correct me if this is not where you were going, but this is where my mind went. Traditionally they were just like a weatherboard house, and now I feel like they're really blending those coastal elements, but also with a contemporary flair to them. And I feel like that's where I'm seeing the kind of coastal home evolve a lot.
Elham.
I don't think it's any one particular one. For me, what I've been excited to see is the integration of a lot of those sustainability principles across all of the different sort of main forecast designs. So I think just seeing that flexibility, adaptability piece being reflected, as well as a lot of the focus on materials and how a home performs. So I think for me, it's like just being really happy to see that integrated, so we're on the right path. Yay.
Damien?
Look, I think they're all excellent, and you'd be happy with any one of those designs. And, you know, we're seeing those designs being delivered out of our member manufacturers all around the country currently, and they're fantastic. If I had to personally say, I have a little house in the country which I plan to live in because I want to move out on the children, not wait for them to move out on me. And so the barn is really interesting to me right now because I need to do something up there, and that's really appealing to me right now.
Neale?
Well, she's already taken my answer, but I think, the coastal, like in Australia, if you look at where we live, most of the houses are on the coast, and we've always got that dream to have this coastal feel, and it's a nice feeling of a house internally and externally. And I think a lot of my clients have been asking us for coastal, and they're like, I live on the beach, I want this beautiful coastal vibe, but then their budget is big enough to do more contemporary things. So I've seen coastal evolve to, I guess, modern coastal to contemporary.
Just very, very quickly, your thoughts on modern classic, the new design that's found its way into the list for this year. I mean, Tim, anything?
Look, I'm assuming that's something to do with Canberra's mid-century modern classic. Is that right? In which case, look, I'm all for it. I'm personally a little
Perfectly
more Scando
said.
barn vibe myself. But
Perfectly said, thank you. Kate, what do you think of modern classic?
I'm quite drawn to the modern classic design, and I feel like a lot of people are as well because, as we've touched on a lot today, the cost of building is so expensive. So it's kind of a nice peace of mind knowing you're building something that is classic and is going to last for a long time. And I feel like that's probably why we're quite drawn to that design.
Elham?
Yes, I would agree. I would agree with all of that. I mean, because to be honest, I didn't sit in on your briefing call, so I did watch the video later on, but I was very excited by all of the designs, and I think we were talking about that before we actually came to sit down. But the modern classic is beautiful because I think it does encapsulate a lot of the elements that people are naturally drawn to. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Thumbs up from me.
Damien?
Yeah, look, I'd have to agree with some of those comments. And for me, we've just finished sort of renovating and extending a family home. And when we made some decisions, it was what's going to be looking great in 20 years' time? You know, what are we going to be able to do now that we don't have to refurb and change because the fashion changes? So that's what I really love about it. It's sort of that classic look that will always look classic, will always fit in. And, you know, in 20 years' time, you won't think, oh, we made a bad decision there. So that's what I like.
Yeah.
I think everyone just loves the curves. The curves, yeah. And I think for me, I'm in the sort of multi-dwelling stuff, doing duplexes and things like that. And resale is a massive thing. So people want to spend as least amount possible and get the best return. And modern classical looks expensive. It's got that resort, the arches. I think that just sells houses pretty well. So it's definitely on trend at the moment. But the reason I'm seeing it emerge so much, I think, is because it sells for more.
Thank you. Now, I think technically we are at the end of our time, but do we have time for a couple of questions, if there are any from the audience? Can we do that? Can I get a green light for some questions? Okay, just if any, yes, thank you. Oh, Bianca, I was looking for you. Thank you. Does anyone have questions for any of the members of our panel? Yes. Hang on, I think we might be able to get you a mic, Natalie. I think that might help, especially for the people watching online.
Hello, I'll do that again.
That's better.
Hi there, my name's Natalie Puker. I'm the Chief Technologist for Google Australia. So loving the conversation around digitisation. Also a next-gen developer. And my question is very much actually for Tim, and it's the big I word, interest rates. Just last week, I was speaking to one of the CEOs of Australia's largest super funds, and he seems to believe that there won't be many more interest rates cuts coming soon. Our economy is actually going very strong. He also sees from CommBank's book of business, which is they have the largest home loan book of business in the country, that the data is showing that there actually isn't interest rate mortgage stress, which was quite shocking to me. So I'm really keen to get your view on where are we seeing the disconnect between the data and the sentiment amongst Aussies.
At about 3:30 this afternoon, I'm starting a presentation. It goes for an hour and a half and it'll answer that question.
I need the 1 minute version, Tim.
So, look, all of that description is true, but keep in mind too, the Reserve Bank board, the last board have just finished up. The new board comes into place, appointed by the current government. They're going to have a slightly different attitude to how they're setting interest rates, which is why I said 1, possibly 3. One of the things that the Reserve Bank's trying to do to achieve is to get a higher rate of unemployment. They can't get there. Everything they've done is stalling that. And the reason that's stalling is because the government's spending more money than they're earning, and they're doing that really quickly. Now, if you take that back to the 1980s, we had a 1980s cycle where the government spent more money than they earned and interest rates went up, and the government responded by spending more money than they earned and interest rates went up. And that's how we got the 1991 recession when it all fell over. We're not in that cycle just yet. What the government's doing at the moment of spending money coming out of the pandemic is the right thing to do. Maybe just a little too strong. However, in the short term, we're looking at cyclical decline in interest rates for nothing to do with what's happened domestically. We had high CPI, just like every other economy in the world, because of the pandemic. We now have lower CPI for exactly the same reasons. All of the Reserve Bank's actions up and down interest rates had negligible overall impact. We would have seen the same outcome regardless. Now we're heading back into domestic factors driving what our CPI and what our interest rates are going to be, in which case we, over the course of the till 2030, interest rates will be slightly higher than what they were pre-pandemic and therefore lower than what they are at the moment. That's me with a leg either side of the fence there.
Thank you. We've probably got time for just one more question. Anyone got a question for our panellists? Oh, my gosh. Sorry, online. Here we are. Okay. Kate, question for you. Do you ever incorporate cultural and regional influences into your interior design projects? It's an interesting one. Cultural and regional influences. I guess, are you influenced by external factors?
Yes, and I also think it depends on the clients that I'm working with and what they're really asking me to achieve for them. So I can't say that's something that's been strong in requests from clients, but if it was, it would be something that I would definitely have to look into. So yeah, I'm not really answering that, but it hasn't been a big thing for me.
No.
It's
an interesting question, unusual question. Damien, there's one here. Directly relevant to you. Do you know if there has been research done on the resale of prefab homes? Are they equally desirable as traditional homes, and how does it affect the value?
I don't have any research, but that's something we should certainly look into. I can tell you that the homes that we're talking about from our member manufacturers, and there's a couple of them in the room today, are designed with the same design life, 50 years structural. They're designed to the National Construction Code, to the Australian standards, so they are for all intents and purposes, permanent homes, but the fact is they were built in a factory and they can be removed at some point in the future if they needed to be. Yeah. So therefore, we don't have any data, but from what I can tell, and there is a little bit coming from the land lease community. So that's where retirement villages where you're purchasing the home but you don't own the land, and they're seeing the value of those homes increase at the same rate as traditional homes around them. And that's coming from Western Australia, but other than that, I don't have any additional data yet.
Thank you. Okay, final question from the lady there. Let's get you a microphone.
Sorry, my name's Georgina Wilson and my question's for Damien. I was just wondering if you've done any research in whether there's prefabricated structures that exist in other parts of the world that you might use as a model? And if so, are they suitable for use in Australia?
So if you look at places like Sweden, 84% of their residential construction is prefabricated. In Finland, it's 70%. They have different market drivers. They have the environment as one. They have a very small window for which they can build in. So factory manufacturing is really the only solution they have. They also adopted DFMA and CAD back in the 70s and are very advanced in automation, robotics, and those type of production line techniques. Does that work here? Yes, those production lines are in Australia right now. There are companies setting up and are operating with those types of systems. The look has changed. Obviously, the Scandinavian look is appealing to some, but not to all. So there are other systems from around the world which are being adopted and being manufactured on production lines with robots and automation. Winemen have, CNC saws that cut, slice, dice, nail, screw, glue, all that sort of thing. You've got Rand equipment. There's all different things that are happening around the place coming online. Yes, it works here. The models themselves, the designs change because they need to fit into the Australian landscape. Like I was in the UK late last year presenting there. All of their prefab is brick because the market over there is brick. Every building is brick. So what they did is they met the market. They developed prefab solutions where they were able to attach brick facades to them in the factory and deliver them on site. So I think that's something that's interesting and something that's happening in the market now in Australia as well, is we're starting to meet the market and see what the demand is and develop the solutions to meet what the consumer wants.
Thank you. We are out of time, and I think we do have to get on with the serious business of lunch. But, we could sit here and talk about these subjects all afternoon. Thank you once again to our panellists, to Tim Reardon, Kate Lawrence, Elham Monavari, Damien Crough, and Neale Hipwell. And thanks, of course, to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. It has been a fantastic discussion with our panel of experts, and I'm sure we will walk away from this lunch with some valuable insights into the future of modern home design here in Australia. Whether you're a designer, an architect, a builder, or a homeowner, there is real value in applying these concepts to your own projects and seeing how they can help create homes that are modern, that are efficient, and aligned with the needs of the people who live in them. You can download the full James Hardie Modern Homes Forecast 2025 from the website or watch the accompanying video, which goes further into the hallmarks of each of the 8 modern home styles. Thank you once again for your time. Thank you guys for your participation this afternoon. Thank you to everyone who is watching this presentation online. And of course, thank you to all of you in the room here today. And I hope that this discussion leaves you feeling inspired and ready to shape the future of modern homes. Thank you.